Morning all. I thought it would be nice to look at some games of the 1972 match between Fischer and Spassky, the fantastic World Championship match of 1972, where Bobby Fischer of the United States was playing against defending champion Boris Spassky of the Soviet Union for the World Chess Championship. So this was one of the most famous matches in chess history, and I thought it would be good if we could cover on this channel all the games. So there's quite a few gaps, and some of those gaps, still quite hard fought games which we haven't covered yet, and game 12 was such an example. So let's see what happened in game 12. Fischer kicked off with c4, so he was avoiding theoretical preparations by playing c4. He'd never really played c4 much before this match. Maybe one game against Polgiavsky as an experiment, which was a draw, but apart from that, not much. I think there was another which was a default game, he played c4. But no, okay, so e6, and now after knight f3, d5, we get a transposition into more Queen's Gambit declined territory for the moment. Knight to f6, knight c3, bishop e7. So now we have a Queen's Gambit declined. It looks very, very classical line, bishop g5. And now we see an early h6, which is actually in my live book the most popular move here. 4-8-8-8 games. Castling is 4-7-8-2, so not much between them. Knight bd7, 1058. So h6, the bishop goes back to h4 here. Does it really want to take on f6? Not really. That's the most usual move in this position, preserving the dark square bishop, and is meant to give overall a small advantage for white, potentially. 3,565 games. Bishop takes f6, only 1312, so for the moment it's important to keep the dark square bishop. Black castles e3, knight bd7, rook c1. Now this moves c6. Black is waiting with c6 for this bishop to move. He's able to play d takes c4, then maybe b5 and try and sort out usually this bishop. Try and put it potentially on this diagonal. So bishop d3, we see this now, d takes c4, bishop takes c4, b5. So bishop goes back, and now we see a6, so that black can potentially play for c5 and bishop b7. Fischer though undermines immediately this structure interfering with black's plan. Now this move is actually the most common move as well. a4 is with 58 games, that was what was played here. Castling 32, so the routine castling is not played, but a4 may be much more accurate here. So asking black what to do about this particular problem. Now, if black did play bishop b7, is there a problem with just playing bishop b7? Let's have a quick look. I think it might not be just white castles, there's nothing spectacular there. But here black does have what would seem to be a fragmentary choice instead of bishop b7, and it's played b takes a4 because it's seemingly volunteering fragmentation of pawn structure here, a potentially backward pawn on the c file and an a file as well. But what is black getting here? Because this actually b takes e4 here is actually more common move, 43 games instead of bishop b7. So okay, let's see. Well, I think black's getting a little bit of dynamic play. Check, and this is potentially quite a nuisance. Well, the queen can't go in front because the queen takes a4. Okay, and rook c3, we'd have knight d5, I believe. So we see knight d2. Okay, and now Boris plays again a common move in this position, bishop b4. 38 games, it seems one of the only moves to play here. It's stopping white castling for a moment, otherwise he'll just lose the d2 knight, surely. Let's just put on a bit as well at this point. There's no little trick or anything. I think just castling, we just take the knight on d2. So Fischer plays knight c3, but again we're left in this question: was this volunteering of structural damage. Was it worth it? Well, c5 dissolves a weakness immediately. Or does it? Knight b3, the queen goes back. White's still enjoying a slight advantage here, it seems. Now we see White castling. And in fact, 14 games in live book from this position may be influenced by this game. In fact, this such a famous match. Players imitating both sides of this game. C takes d4, and now White usually doesn't go with an isolated queen's pawn here. In fact, there's no mention of ed4 anywhere. It's always knight takes d4. So knight takes d4, and the engine likes knight takes d4 a lot better as well. Here it looks as though knight d4 promises knight c6 at some point as well. So we see bishop b7, covering that for a moment. But now the bishop immediately challenged with bishop e4. The queen goes to protect the bishop, and the queen's kicked a bit. Bishop g3, queen a7. So White still has this idea, though, that knight c6 here could be really annoying. It could pick up this dark square bishop, and it is actually played knight c6. Okay, can black actually avoid this? Avoid playing bishop takes c6 in this position? I'm not sure, because queen b6, there's a forcing move here, knight a4, and this is actually starting to be quite nasty. Where does the queen go? The queen's getting very short squares. If it goes to b5, knight d4 now, attacking the bishop and the queen here, and that's actually winning for White, this position. So actually Spassky's move here after knight c6 is virtually forced. He plays bishop takes c6, giving up the light squared bishop. So is this a significant advantage for White? Is it enough to win this position? These bishops seem quite powerful, complementary on these squares. So a difficult position, or is there enough counterplay for black after rook ac8? Okay, it seems actually that this is very annoying on c4. If the bishop routinely goes back, can black consider bishop takes c3? Possibly. Or maybe just keeping the pressure with queen b6. It's still a small advantage for White. But okay, in the game actually, knight a4 was played, keeping the queen kind of locked out of b6, b7, c7, all these squares. The queen is kind of locked out of the position for a moment. Rook fd8, and now bishop f3, and it looks as though, is there any useful discovery on the queen on d1? Well, let's have a look. If knight e5, no, White can play in this position simply bishop takes e5, ignoring rook takes d1, because the back row, rook takes c8. This is actually very, very good for White, because he'd be picking up this rook as well. There's a lot of material for the queen to get, so there's no threat of knight e5. Okay, so we see a5, which looks like a very sensible move. Gives the queen at least the a6 square to work with. Look at these bishops just stopping the queen from doing anything. The knight's stopping the queen from using these squares potentially. Well, this rook as well. So a6 is given to the queen with move a5. And now we see rook c6. And apparently this might be a small inaccuracy actually from an engine point of view. The engine is giving actually taking on c8 here, and then playing queen d3. I wonder what the idea of this is. Maybe just to play queen b5 with a lot of pressure on black, and that's the idea, or rook d1 to strengthen control of the d file. But okay, in the game we see this rook c6. Black has the option of taking on c6, which he takes. Bishop takes c6, and now Boris Spassky plays rook c8 here, and it looks to be about equal, even though these bishops are still complementing each other very nicely. But black does have queen a6 here. Okay, can things go wrong for White on, say, a routine move with that glare of the queen? Is there anything going on here? Fischer's move is actually the cautious h3 here. If he had played queen b3, I don't think there's any major disasters lurking here. White just has got a very solid position now, so not that easy to self-destruct. So h3, queen b5, the queen's kicked, queen c6, the queen's kicked again, queen b5. Is it going to be a draw? Well, Fischer now plays b3. He doesn't go for a repetition attack on the queen. Bishop e7, bishop e2, queen b4, and it looks as though, okay, b3 looks to be a potential issue if this bishop wasn't on b8, especially if the rook could join in for an attack on b3 with b8. But actually the rook's attacked here. Rook c6, bishop d3, and now knight c5. Fischer doesn't play knight takes c5, but rather attacks the rook. The rook drops back, and now knight takes c5, bishop takes c5. And now, okay, rook c1. So what's going on with b3 here? Is this a little trap? If queen takes b3 is played, I think there's the back row issue here with this bishop eyeing h7. Can you see what white can play in this position if I give you 10 seconds starting from now? So this is just a what if for queen takes b3. Okay, white would have rook takes c5 winning here actually. This is a winning position because of this check on a8. That's pretty annoying. So b3 is immune here. Spassky plays rook d8 and now bishop c4, and it looks as though the pawn's pretty solid actually. And this pawn, white can't really do anything with that. Queen d2, the rook goes just to f1 here. Bishop b4, bishop c7. It's good that well, the bishop and queen are both holding a5. A5 is not going anywhere. So queen c6. Queen c2 now is played. Bishop e5. Does black want to have double pawns, or is he not bothered? He plays actually rook d2, not too bothered about double pawns. Check. Now king h7. And now Fischer does double the pawns, and we're ending up here with opposite coloured bishops. And often, you know, sometimes they can be good for the attacker, opposite coloured bishops. Will that be the case here? Has black got enough going on for f2? Has white got anything going on the knight squares? Queen f3, encouraging f5 here. Okay, and now Fischer plays g4, just trying to break up black's pawns, offering to undouble them, just trying to get to the king really. This pawn cannot be taken because of queen takes f7. And that would be horrible. So actually this is not a question to undouble the pawns at all. Queen e4, king g2, king g6, now rook c1. Okay, bishop a3 attacking the rook moves, bishop b4, rook c1, and again the repetition attacks avoided here by this time by Spassky. Bishop e7, g takes f5 check, e takes f5. Okay, and the pawns look a bit messy here, fragmented, but where is white's advantage though? Can white really exploit these pawns? White actually plays rook e1, and this allows a neat little simplifying tactic to a very, very clearly drawish position actually for black, which is good to draw with black generally, but at this point in the match Spassky was behind in game 12. I believe Spassky was behind in the match, but he used the tactic to draw here by force. It's like an invitation. What else can he do? But he played okay, shall I give you 10 seconds? Can you see what can black play combinatory wise in this position? 10 seconds starting from now. Okay, black plays rook takes f2 check, using the pin on the queen that it's only the king can take. Now bishop h4 check, and we've got this skewer on e1. King e2, queen takes f3 check, and then bishop takes e1. And although black's a pawn up, it's opposite coloured bishops and very, very drawish. And in fact, if the play did continue, I mean, there's an issue with f5 here immediately, potentially after bishop d3, but actually they agreed a draw here. let's say a what if bishop d3. It's opposite coloured bishop, so it's not really a big deal, even if this was winning a pawn, but it's not, because bishop d6 check. So, but it's not possible for either side to make progress, so a draw was agreed. Okay, without any bishop d3 being played. So this was game 12 of the match. Okay, not the most exciting game of the match, but I thought I wanted to give you a sense of completeness to see all the struggles in this classic 1972 World Championship match. I'll give you a playlist link to the other games, just in case you haven't seen them. So it's part of the 1972 playlist, which I thought I'd try and eventually make complete, to complete the kind of jigsaw puzzle of video annotated games. Okay, comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.